I sat beside my son Nathan's hospital bed, watching him sleep peacefully after they'd set his broken arm. The head nurse, a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes, approached quietly. As she checked his IV, she pressed a folded paper into my palm. Her whispered words chilled me. "Don't come again. He's lying. Check the camera at 2 a.m. Before I could respond, she hurried away. My 35-year-old son lying about a broken bone. The note burned in my hand like a confession I wasn't ready to read. The steady beep of Nathan's heart monitor filled the sterile hospital room as I studied his face in the dim light. My boy, though he hadn't been a boy for decades, looked vulnerable with his arm wrapped in fresh plaster. The same strong features as his mother, Eleanor, God rest her soul. The same dark hair, now touched with early silver at the temples. Watching him sleep took me back 30 years to when he'd broken his wrist falling off his bike. Back then, Eleanor and I had rushed him to the emergency room, both of us frantic with worry. Now it was just me, and the weight of that loneliness pressed against my chest. 5 years had passed since cancer stole Eleanor from us. 5 years since I'd held her hand in a room much like this one, promising I'd take care of our son. She'd worried about Nathan even then, whispering concerns I'd dismissed as medication-induced anxiety. "Promise me you'll watch over him, Cleon," she'd said. Sometimes love means seeing clearly, not just providing blindly. I'd built my fortune in the pharmaceutical industry, rising from a small-town pharmacy owner to executive vice president of a major drug company. The money had come gradually, then suddenly, until I found myself worth more than I'd ever dreamed possible as a young man. $8 million in company stock, another $4 million in various investments, real estate holdings across 3 states. Numbers that meant nothing when Eleanor got sick. I'd have traded every penny to buy her more time. After she passed, Nathan became my anchor. My only child, my legacy. My reason to keep going when grief threatened to pull me under. I threw myself into being the father I thought he needed. When he mentioned struggling with his student loans from physical therapy school, I paid them off completely. $120,000 gone with a single wire transfer. When he said the starting salary at the rehabilitation center wasn't enough to afford a decent house, I bought him one. $400,000 for a beautiful colonial in Westchester, not far from the hospital where he worked. "Dad, you don't have to do this," he'd protested, but his eyes had sparkled with relief. "I can manage on my own." "Nonsense," I'd told him. "What's the point of having money if I can't help my son? Your mother would want this." Melissa had entered our lives 3 years ago, a stunning brunette with a master's degree in marketing and a smile that could light up any room. Nathan had met her at a charity fundraiser the hospital sponsored. Within 6 months, they were married in a lavish ceremony I was only too happy to finance. $75,000 for their special day, and worth every cent to see Nathan's joy. They made a beautiful couple. Melissa seemed devoted to Nathan, always touching his arm, laughing at his jokes, gazing at him with apparent adoration. When I asked about grandchildren, they'd exchange glances and mention wanting to be financially stable first. I understood, or thought I did. Young couples faced different pressures than Eleanor and I had known. Living in Florida now, in a gated community, filled with other retirees, I made it a point to visit every 3 months. The distance hurt, but Nathan insisted he needed space to build his own life. "You can't hover forever, Dad," he'd said with that charming smile. "I'm 35, not 15. Each visit followed a similar pattern. I'd fly up on a Thursday, spend long weekend, catching up, taking them to expensive dinners, slipping Nathan checks when Melissa wasn't looking. For emergencies, I'd say. He'd protest weekly before pocketing the money. This visit had started like any other, until my phone rang at 8 that evening. Nathan's voice strained with pain, explaining he'd fallen from a ladder while cleaning the gutters. His arm was definitely broken. Could I meet him at the hospital? Now, sitting in the uncomfortable visitor's chair, I unfolded the nurse's note again. Her handwriting was precise medical. "Don't come again. He's lying. Check the camera at 2 a.m. The words made no sense. What camera? Why would Nathan lie about falling from a ladder? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. A young nurse entered barely out of school by the look of her. She checked Nathan's chart, adjusted his IV drip, and avoided my eyes completely. As she turned to leave, I caught her arm gently. "Excuse me," I said. "The head nurse who was here earlier, could you tell her I'd like to speak with her?" The girl's face went pale. "Patricia, she left already. Her shift ended. Will she be back tomorrow?" "I don't know, sir. I'm sorry." She practically fled the room. I looked at my watch. 11:45. 2 hours and 15 minutes until I was supposed to check some camera. The note felt heavier in my pocket, weighted with implications I couldn't yet grasp. Nathan stirred in his sleep, mumbling something I couldn't catch. His good hand clenched and unclenched against the hospital blanket. Standing, I stretched muscles stiff from sitting and walked to the window. The parking lot below was nearly empty, pools of yellow light from the street lamps reflecting off the wet asphalt. It had rained earlier, a brief spring shower that left the air smelling clean and green. Somewhere in that darkness was an answer to a question I hadn't known to ask. My phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "How's Nathan? Sorry I had to leave. Early meeting tomorrow. Tell him I love him." I stared at the message, remembering how she'd rushed in earlier, designer heels clicking on the linoleum, a new Louis Vuitton bag on her shoulder I hadn't seen before. She'd kissed Nathan's forehead, murmured sympathies, then checked her phone repeatedly until announcing she had to go. The devoted wife temporarily pulled away by obligation. Midnight came and went. Nathan slept on, occasionally shifting with small groans of discomfort. I dozed fitfully in the chair, jarring awake each time a nurse passed in the hallway. At 12:30, I told the desk I was going to the cafeteria and made my way through the maze of hospital corridors. The cafeteria was nearly deserted, just a few staff members grabbing late-night coffee, and the occasional worried family member picking at vending machine food. I bought coffee I didn't want, and sat at a corner table watching the clock on the wall tick toward 2. 2 young nurses sat at a nearby table, voices carrying in the quiet space. They didn't notice me, an old man hunched over his coffee, invisible in the way the elderly often are. "Did you see the guy in 304? One asked. "The broken arm." My hand stilled on the coffee cup. "Yeah, good-looking guy. Physical therapist, right?" "That's the one. This is like his 3rd time since I started here. Always some accident when his father visits." "Maybe he's just clumsy." The first nurse snorted. "Clumsy, please. You know what Patricia calls him, the frequent flyer. She's been documenting his admissions for 2 years. Always happens when his rich daddy comes to town." "You think he's—" "I don't think anything. I just know Patricia's been a nurse for 30 years, and she doesn't miss much. She tried reporting her suspicions once, but without proof." They gathered their trash and left, passing by without glancing at me. The coffee had gone cold in my hands. My Nathan, a frequent flyer. Accidents timed to my visits. The implications crashed over me like a wave, leaving me gasping for air. I checked my watch, 1:45. Time to learn what camera the nurse meant. Time to discover what my son had been hiding. Time to see clearly, as Eleanor had asked. The walk back to Nathan's room felt endless, each step heavier than the last. Whatever waited for me at 2 a.m., whatever truth that camera held, I knew my life was about to change irrevocably. The devoted father in me wanted to turn away to pretend I'd never received that note. But the man Eleanor had loved, the one who'd built a fortune through careful observation and hard decisions, knew there was only one path forward. I settled back into the visitor's chair and waited for 2 a.m. The note clutched in my pocket, like a grenade with the pin already pulled. The digital clock on Nathan's bedside table glowed 2 a.m. Exactly when I finally understood what camera the nurse meant. My hands trembled slightly as I pulled out my phone and opened the security app I'd installed 2 years ago. The interface came up slowly, requesting my password. I typed it with careful fingers, Eleanor's birthday. The memory of installing those cameras felt distant now, like something from another life. Nathan's house had been broken into while they were on vacation. Nothing valuable taken, just vandalism and a sense of violation. I'd insisted on a security system top of the line with cameras covering every entrance and the main living areas. "It's overkill, Dad," Nathan had argued. "This is a safe neighborhood." But I'd prevailed, writing another check, arranging for professional installation. The system linked to an app on my phone, letting me monitor the feeds remotely. I'd checked it obsessively for the first few weeks, then gradually forgot about it. 6 months later, Nathan had asked me to delete the app. "Melissa feels weird about it," he'd explained over dinner. "Like we're being watched. It's affecting our intimacy." I'd promised to remove it, but never had. Some paternal instinct, perhaps, or simple forgetfulness. The app had sat unused on my phone's back pages, gathering digital dust until tonight. The screen loaded slowly on the hospital's weak Wi-Fi. 8 camera feeds appeared in a grid: front door, back door, living room, kitchen, garage, driveway, and 2 exterior angles. All showed current views of darkness, except for the motion-activated porch light, illuminating empty steps. My finger hovered over the timeline feature. The nurse had been specific: check the camera. Not cameras, plural. But which one? And what was I looking for? I scrolled back to 6 p.m., the time Nathan claimed he'd fallen. The daylight feeds showed an empty house. No ladder by the gutters. No activity at all. I jumped between cameras, searching for any movement. At 6:47, Nathan's car pulled into the garage. He emerged looking perfectly healthy, no signs of pain or injury. Melissa's BMW was already there. The garage camera provided the clearest view. I watched Nathan enter through the side door, calling out to Melissa. She appeared moments later, wearing workout clothes and a smile. They talked animatedly, though the cameras recorded no audio. Nathan gestured wildly, with both arms, clearly excited about something. Melissa laughed and kissed him. Then everything changed. At 7:05, they returned to the garage together. Nathan had changed into old jeans and a torn t-shirt. He pulled a workbench away from the wall, while Melissa retrieved something from a cabinet. When she turned back to him, I had to pause the feed and zoom in to confirm what my eyes were seeing. A hammer. She held a standard claw hammer, like someone comfortable with its weight. My stomach churned as I forced myself to continue watching. Nathan arranged his left arm on the workbench, positioning it carefully. He stuffed something in his mouth, what looked like a leather belt. Melissa stood beside him, hammer raised, and they both looked directly at the camera. They knew it was there. They'd known all along. Melissa brought the hammer down with practiced precision. Once, twice, the third blow, making Nathan's body convulse. He bit down on the belt, his face contorting in agony. But he didn't pull away. He kept his arm in place until she finished. The timestamp read 7:12. 5 minutes later, he'd called me. I had to turn away from the phone, fighting waves of nausea. My son had voluntarily broken his own arm. His wife had wielded the hammer. The casual efficiency of it suggested this wasn't their first time. When I could look again, I watched them in the aftermath. Nathan cradled his broken arm, but he was smiling through the pain. Melissa set the hammer aside, and they actually high-fived with their free hands. She said something that made him laugh despite his obvious discomfort. Then she helped him to the car, playing the concerned wife, even with no audience but the camera they knew was watching. The feed showed them leaving at 7:18. Nathan called me at 7:17, already in the car, already spinning his tale of falling from a ladder. I scrolled back further, needing to understand the full scope of their deception. The garage seemed to be their planning space, away from the other cameras. 3 days ago, I found them there again, huddled over Melissa's laptop. She pointed at the screen, while Nathan nodded. At one point, he held up 3 fingers, then 5. Melissa shook her head and held up 4. Were they negotiating? Planning how much to ask from me? I searched through more footage, my horror growing with each discovery. 2 weeks ago, they'd practiced in the garage. Nathan pretended to fall while Melissa coached him on his reaction. They'd rehearsed his phone call to me, with her feeding him lines. Sound more panicked? I could read her lips saying, "He needs to believe you're really hurt." The camera had captured it all, their cold preparation for fraud. My fingers felt numb as I continued searching, finding more evidence with each pass. They kept props in the garage, a ladder they never used, medical supplies, even a fake cast from a previous scheme. A sound from Nathan's bed made me look up sharply. He'd shifted in his sleep, the real cast on his arm stark white against the hospital blanket. For a moment, I felt the familiar surge of paternal concern. Then, I remembered the video, and the concern curdled into something else entirely. I returned to the footage from after they'd left for the hospital. At 10 p.m., Melissa had returned home alone. She went straight to the garage and retrieved the hammer, cleaning it carefully with bleach wipes before returning it to its place. Then she'd made a phone call, pacing excitedly as she talked. At one point, she'd pulled up something on her phone and smiled at the screen. Bank app. She was checking their bank balance. The final piece of evidence came from this morning's footage. I'd been so focused on the injury timeline that I'd missed it initially. At 9 a.m., while I was still on my flight from Florida, a delivery truck had arrived. Melissa signed for several packages, all from high-end stores. She'd carried them inside, emerging later with the new Louis Vuitton bag she'd brought to the hospital. She'd gone shopping in anticipation of my money. I closed the app and sat in the darkness processing what I'd learned. Every visit, every check I'd written, every concerned phone call had been part of their plan. The son I'd devoted myself to protecting had been systematically defrauding me. The daughter-in-law I'd welcomed into our family was his willing accomplice. But worse than the money was the casualness of their deception. The high five after breaking his arm. The laughter amid his pain. The practiced ease of their performance. How many times had they done this? How many hospital visits had I paid for believing each story of accidents and misfortune? Nathan stirred again, mumbling in his medicated sleep. "Dad." I leaned forward automatically. "I'm here, son. Thanks for coming. Knew I could count on you." The words meant to comfort felt like another blow. He was acting even in his sleep, maintaining the charade. Or perhaps the manipulation ran so deep, it had become second nature. "Rest," I told him. "We'll talk in the morning." He settled back into sleep, unaware that everything had changed. I sat back in my chair, my phone heavy in my hand. The evidence was undeniable, captured by the very cameras Nathan thought he'd convinced me to abandon. Patricia, the head nurse, had risked her job to warn me. She'd seen what I'd been too blind to notice. Questions flooded my mind. How long had this been going on? Was it just about money? Or was there something deeper, more sinister at play? And what kind of man had I raised who could smile while breaking his own bones for profit? The hospital room felt suffocating suddenly. I needed airspace to think. But I couldn't leave, couldn't risk Nathan waking to find me gone. He'd know something was wrong. And I needed him to keep believing I was still the gullible father, at least, until I understood the full scope of their scheme. I pulled up my banking app, afraid of what I might find. The recent transactions told their own story. $3,000 for Nathan's car repairs last month. $5,000 for their emergency roof replacement in January. $8,000 for Melissa's medical procedure last fall. Always some crisis. Always some urgent need that couldn't wait. Going back further, the pattern became undeniable. Every visit coincided with some financial emergency. Every check I wrote preceded a flurry of luxury purchases. They'd been bleeding me, systematically, professionally, hiding their theft behind a facade of family devotion. The timestamp on my phone showed 3 a.m. 5 hours since Nathan's calculated fall. 5 hours since I'd rushed here terrified for my son's well-being. Now I sat beside his bed, equally terrified, but for entirely different reasons. Patricia's note had been a mercy, though it didn't feel like one. Sometimes ignorance was bliss. Sometimes the truth broke more than bones. But Eleanor had been right, as she usually was. Love meant seeing clearly, not just providing blindly. And what I saw now, illuminated by the harsh light of those camera feeds, was a betrayal that went beyond money. They hadn't just stolen from my bank account. They'd stolen my trust, my love, my belief in the fundamental goodness of my own son. The question now was what to do with this terrible knowledge. The father in me wanted to confront Nathan immediately, to demand explanations, to hope somehow this was all a misunderstanding. But the executive who'd navigated corporate sharks for decades knew better. This required strategy, not emotion. If they'd been planning their moves this carefully, I needed to be equally deliberate in my response. Nathan's breathing deepened, the monitors maintaining their steady rhythm. He looked peaceful, content in his deception. Let him rest, I decided. Let them both believe their scheme had worked once again. Because now I had something they didn't expect: knowledge. And with that knowledge, I would uncover the full truth of what my son had become. The camera had shown me their crime. Now, I needed to discover their motive, their method, and most importantly, their ultimate goal. The hunt for answers would begin at dawn. But for now, I sat in the darkness with my broken trust, mourning the son I thought I knew, while planning justice for the one I'd actually raised. Dawn crept through the hospital blinds, painting pale stripes across Nathan's sleeping form. I dozed fitfully in the chair, my dreams haunted by hammers and high fives. Each time I woke, the reality crashed back. My son was a fraud, and I was his mark. Nathan stirred as the morning shift arrived. A new nurse, cheerful, despite the early hour, bustled in to check his vitals. I played my role perfectly, the concerned father, asking about pain levels and recovery time. Nathan played his, too wincing at the right moments, accepting sympathy with practiced grace. "Dad, you must be exhausted," he said once the nurse left. "You should go home, get some real sleep." "Nonsense. I'm not leaving until I know you're okay." He smiled, that boyish grin I'd once found endearing. Now, I saw the calculation behind it. "You're the best dad. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words were poison, wrapped in honey. I forced myself to pat his good hand. That's what fathers are for. Melissa arrived at 8, carrying coffee, and wearing a performance of worry. She kissed Nathan's forehead, adjusted his pillows, played the devoted wife to perfection. The Louis Vuitton bag was absent today, replaced by something more modest. Smart. Don't flaunt the spoils too obviously. "Cleon, you look terrible," she said, touching my shoulder. "Please go rest. I'll stay with Nathan." "I'm fine," I assured her, studying her face for cracks in the mask. There were none. She'd had practice after all. Dr. Morrison arrived for rounds, a competent woman in her 40s, who examined Nathan with professional efficiency. The break was clean, she explained. 6 to 8 weeks in the cast, physical therapy after. Nathan nodded solemnly, adding that he knew the PT protocols well from his work. "How exactly did this happen?" Dr. Morrison asked, making notes on her tablet. Nathan launched into his latter story with impressive detail. The height, the angle of his fall, the way he'd tried to catch himself. He'd clearly rehearsed every word. I recorded it all on my phone, hidden in my pocket, the voice memo app capturing his lies for later evidence. After the doctor left, I excused myself to make some calls. In the family lounge down the hall, I first phoned Tom Harrison. Tom and I went way back to my corporate days, when he'd been the FBI agent who'd helped our company navigate a complex fraud case. He'd retired into private investigation 5 years ago. "Cleon," his gravelly voice answered on the second ring. "Been too long. How are you holding up?" "I need your help, Tom. Quietly. Can you meet me today?" "Name the place." We arranged to meet at a diner near the hospital in 2 hours. Next, I called Bill Chapman, an old friend who'd become a hospital administrator. We'd served on several charity boards together over the years. "Bill, I need a favor. My son Nathan is at Mercy General. I'd like to review his medical history, specifically his admission records. There are some insurance questions." Bill hesitated. "That's typically restricted to the patient, Cleon." "I understand, but I've been paying his bills directly. Surely that gives me some standing." "Let me see what I can do. Give me an hour." I returned to Nathan's room to find him discussing discharge plans with a nurse. They wanted to keep him one more night for observation. Perfect. That gave me time to work. I need to run some errands, I told Nathan. Get your prescriptions filled, that sort of thing. Dad, you don't have to. I insist. I pulled out my checkbook, making a show of writing. Here's $5,000 to cover immediate expenses. Medical bills, time off work, whatever you need. His eyes lit up despite his attempt to appear reluctant. Dad, that's too much. Nothing is too much for my son. Melissa squeezed his shoulder, her smile bright with greed. They exchanged a look that made my stomach turn. Victory. They thought they'd won again. I met Tom at the Bluebird Diner, a relic from the 60s, that served strong coffee, and asked no questions. He looked the same as ever, steel gray hair, sharp eyes that missed nothing, the bearing of a man who'd spent decades reading lies. You look like hell, Cleon, he said without preamble. What's going on? I told him everything. The nurse's note, the camera footage, my growing suspicions. Tom listened without interruption, occasionally jotting notes in a small pad. When I finished, he sat back and whistled low. Your own son, that's cold. I need to know how deep this goes, Tom. How long it's been happening, what else they're planning. You've come to the right man. Give me 48 hours. I'll need access to whatever financial records you can provide, and I'll want to run surveillance on both of them. Whatever it costs. This isn't about money, Cleon. This is about a friend who's been wronged. He paused. You prepared for what I might find these cases when it's family. They rarely end well. I need the truth, Tom. All of it. We shook hands, and I headed back to the hospital. Bill Chapman had left a message he'd arranged for me to review Nathan's records that afternoon. The pieces were falling into place. Back in Nathan's room, I found him on the phone. He ended the call quickly when I entered, but I caught the tail end. Definitely at least 20,000 this time. Who was that? I asked casually. Just work, letting them know I'll be out for a while. Another lie. I'd called his workplace that morning, claiming to be updating emergency contact information. Nathan had used all his sick days and vacation time. They expected him back tomorrow, or he'd face disciplinary action. He had no intention of going. The afternoon brought my meeting with Bill Chapman. He'd arranged for me to review records in a private office, away from prying eyes. What I found there shattered any remaining illusions. 8 hospital admissions in 3 years, each one corresponding to my quarterly visits. Broken ribs from a fall downstairs. A dislocated shoulder from a car accident. Lacerations from broken glass. Concussion from slipping on ice. The injuries escalated in severity over time, as did the associated costs. But the most damning evidence came from the billing records. Each injury had been billed to both my direct payments and Nathan's insurance. Double-dipping that constituted clear fraud. The total stolen through this scheme alone exceeded $200,000. I photographed every document building my evidence file. The administrator who'd helped Bill gather the records, a careful woman named Janet, noticed my distress. Are you all right, Mr. Winters? Just concerned about my son's pattern of injuries? I managed. She glanced at the door, then leaned closer. Between us, your son's case has raised flags in our billing department. The frequency of accidents always during your documented visits. We've been discussing whether to report it to the insurance fraud division. Why haven't you? No concrete proof. Accidents happen. But if you're noticing patterns too. I thanked her and left with my evidence. Back at Nathan's room, I maintained my facade, while my phone buzzed with updates from Tom. He'd already uncovered disturbing information about their finances. Nathan and Melissa lived far beyond their means, funded entirely by their schemes against me. That evening, as Nathan dozed under pain medication, I sat in the visitor's chair and planned my next moves. Each piece of evidence added to the picture of calculated deception. But Tom's preliminary findings suggested something even darker waited to be discovered. My phone lit up with a text from him. Can you meet tonight? Found something you need to see immediately. I looked at Nathan sleeping peacefully in his web of lies. Whatever Tom had discovered, I knew it would change everything. Again. On my way, I texted back. The investigation was deepening, and with each revelation, the son I'd loved disappeared further into shadow. Soon, I'd have to face the full truth of what Nathan had become. But first, I needed to understand why. What drove a child to prey on his own father? What endgame justified such cruelty? The answers waited in the darkness beyond the hospital walls. I kissed Nathan's forehead, tasting the bitter irony of the gesture, and headed out to meet Tom. The hunt for truth had only just begun. The parking garage beneath Tom's office building felt like a tomb at 9 p.m. My footsteps echoed off concrete as I made my way to the elevator. Tom had insisted on meeting at his office rather than somewhere public. That meant he'd found something serious. His office occupied a corner of the 14th floor, all glass and shadows at this hour. Tom sat behind his desk, multiple monitors glowing with information, file folders spread across every surface. He looked up as I entered, his expression grim. "Sit down, Cleon. You're going to need to." I took the chair across from him, bracing myself. "What did you find?" "Your son and daughter-in-law are part of something bigger than simple fraud." He turned one monitor toward me. "Ever hear of a website called Golden Harvest?" "No. It's a private forum, membership by invitation only. They teach people how to extract money from elderly parents through what they call crisis creation." He clicked through screenshots. "Nathan and Melissa have been active members for 2 years. They post under handles, but I traced their IP addresses." The screen showed a message board filled with topics that made my blood run cold. Maximizing hospital sympathy, creating believable accidents, insurance claims without detection, managing suspicious relatives. "They share strategies," Tom continued, "rate each other's schemes. Nathan's actually considered something of a star in their community. Look at this." He pulled up a post from Nathan's account. "5th successful operation complete. $15K from the old man, plus $8K from insurance. The key is escalation. Start small, build sympathy, then go bigger. My father thinks he's helping his poor, accident-prone son." The responses congratulated him, asked for tips, shared their own successes. It was a community of predators teaching each other to hunt their own families. "It gets worse," Tom said. 3 months ago, they started a new thread category, long-term solutions. Meaning, ways to gain full control of their parents' estates. Power of attorney guardianship declaring them incompetent. He pulled up another screenshot. "Nathan's been particularly interested in a substance called scopolamine. In small doses over time, it mimics dementia symptoms." My hand instinctively went to my coffee cup from earlier. Melissa had brought it, insisted I drink it. "They're poisoning me." I had a contact run some tests. Tom pushed a lab report across the desk. "Hair sample analysis from your last 3 visits. Trace amounts of scopolamine increasing with each visit. Not enough to cause immediate symptoms, but over time." The room spun slightly. Or was that my imagination? How long before it would have worked? At this rate, another year, maybe 2. You'd start forgetting things, seeming confused. Nathan would document everything, building a case for guardianship. By the time you realized what was happening, if you ever did, it would be too late. I stared at the evidence, trying to reconcile this monster with the boy who'd built pillow forts in our living room. There's more, isn't there? Melissa's playing her own game. Tom pulled up text messages retrieved from a phone cloning program. She's been having an affair with her personal trainer, Marcus Wade, for 18 months. But here's the interesting part. She's siphoning money from Nathan to fund Marcus's gym expansion. She tells Nathan she's shopping, getting spa treatments. Really, she's investing in her exit strategy. The messages between Melissa and Marcus were explicit about more than their physical relationship. They discussed timing, how much money she could extract, when to make their move. One message from Melissa stood out. "Once the old man's estate is in N's control, I'll file for divorce. Half of everything plus alimony. Then, we disappear to Costa Rica. She's planning to con the con man, I said. Exactly. Nathan has no idea. He's so focused on you that he's blind to her deception. Tom leaned back. But there's one more thing, Cleon. The worst part. I couldn't imagine anything worse, but I nodded for him to continue. Patricia Thompson, the nurse who warned you, I did some checking. She's been building a file on Nathan for 2 years. She noticed the pattern early, but couldn't get anyone to listen. Turns out, she has personal experience. Her own brother did something similar to their father. She's been waiting for the right moment to act. She risked her job warning me. More than that, Nathan and Melissa know about her suspicions. Look at this. Another screenshot, this one from a different forum thread. Nathan discussing the nosy nurse who'd been asking questions. The responses chilled me. Suggestions for discrediting her, getting her fired, even hints at more permanent solutions. They're dangerous, Cleon. This isn't just about money anymore. They're protecting a lifestyle, a whole identity built on deception. People have killed for less. I absorbed the full scope of their betrayal. It wasn't a momentary lapse or desperation. It was systematic evil planned and executed with others who'd turned against their own blood. My son hadn't fallen into bad company. He'd sought it out, excelled at it, taught others his methods. What about the others? I asked. The other parents being targeted. I've identified at least 30 active members in the tri-state area. All adult children, all targeting parents over 65. The total theft could be in the millions. This is organized crime, Cleon, just wearing a familiar face. We spent another hour reviewing evidence. Tom had been thorough financial records, showing Nathan's lavish spending, surveillance photos of Melissa meeting Marcus, transcripts from the forums that detailed past and future schemes. He'd even found video from other hospital security cameras showing Nathan's previous accidents. So what do I do? I asked finally. How do I stop them? Carefully. They think they're winning, which makes them vulnerable. But if they sense you're onto them, they might accelerate their plans or worse. Tom gathered several files. I recommend bringing in law enforcement, but we need more evidence first. Specifically, we need to catch them in the act. The birthday party, I said suddenly. My 70th birthday is next month. I always make a big deal about it, invite everyone. What if I announced something that would force their hand? Tom smiled grimly. Like plans to change your will, or marry someone new who'd inherit everything, or donate my entire estate to charity. Something that would threaten their plans. That could work. Make them desperate enough to reveal themselves fully. But it's dangerous, Cleon. Desperate people do desperate things. My son's been poisoning me slowly while breaking his own bones for money. We're already past dangerous. We planned late into the night. Tom would continue surveillance, gathering more evidence. I'd maintain my role as the devoted, oblivious father, while setting the trap for my birthday party. We'd coordinate with law enforcement when the time was right, ensuring not just Nathan and Melissa faced justice, but their entire network. As I prepared to leave, Tom stopped me. One more thing. That forum, Golden Harvest. The founder goes by Administrator 1. Very careful, very smart. I haven't cracked their identity yet, but they're local. Some of the posts reference details only someone in this area would know. You think Nathan knows who it is? Possibly. Or it could be someone you'd never suspect. These people are experts at hiding in plain sight. Could be a neighbor, a professional, even someone in law enforcement or social services. The perfect position to identify vulnerable targets. I drove back to the hospital through empty streets, my mind churning. Every car that followed too closely made me paranoid. Every shadow could hide a threat. Nathan had turned me into prey in my own life. But prey can become predator when cornered. And I'd been a corporate predator for decades, just in cleaner clothes. Those skills, strategic thinking, careful planning, ruthless execution, would serve me now in a different arena. Nathan was awake when I returned, scrolling through his phone. He brightened when he saw me, and I fought the urge to recoil from his false warmth. "Dad, where were you?" I was worried. "Just needed some air. Hospital rooms get claustrophobic." He studied my face with concern that might have fooled me yesterday. "You look tired. Please go home and rest. Melissa will be here first thing in the morning." "Actually, I've been thinking." I sat in the visitor's chair, choosing my words carefully. "My birthday's coming up. The big 7-0. I want to do something special." Like what? His interest sharpened. "A party at the country club. Invite everyone. And I want to make an announcement about my future plans. Estate planning, that sort of thing." Nathan's eyes gleamed. "That's a great idea, Dad. You should absolutely plan for the future. I knew you'd understand. We'll talk more when you're feeling better." I watched him settle back, already planning his next moves. Let him plan. Let them both scheme and dream of wealth they'd never touch. Because now I knew the truth, all of it. And truth was a weapon they'd never see coming. The nurse who'd warned me had risked everything. Tom was risking his reputation digging into dangerous people. It was time I risked something too. Time to stop being the victim and start being the father Eleanor would have wanted. One who protected not just his son, but all the other victims Nathan was teaching to create. The golden harvest they'd planned would yield only bitter fruit. I'd make sure of it. The week following Nathan's discharge passed in a careful dance of deception. I played the devoted father, while documenting every lie, every manipulation, every grain of evidence for the case building against my son. Nathan and Melissa performed their roles with equal dedication, unaware their audience had seen behind the curtain. I met with James Peterson, my estate attorney, on a cloudy Tuesday morning. James had handled my affairs for 15 years, guiding me through Eleanor's death and the complex restructuring of my assets. His office, all mahogany and leather-bound books, felt like a sanctuary of old-world discretion. "I need to protect my estate, James." I began after explaining the situation. Everything, immediately. James, unflappable after decades of handling family dramas, took careful notes. "Irrevocable trusts would be your best option. Once established, you can't change them, but neither can anyone else control them, regardless of your mental state. Do it. Everything except enough liquid assets to maintain my current lifestyle. That's roughly $12 million, Cleon. Are you certain? Put $8 million in a charitable trust. The rest in a trust for my own care, managed by independent trustees." I paused. "And James' name, Patricia Thompson, as one of the trustees. The nurse from the hospital." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Unusual choice. She showed more care for my well-being than my own son. I want people I can trust." We spent 3 hours structuring everything. The beauty was its immediacy. Once signed, the trusts were untouchable. Nathan could have me declared incompetent tomorrow, and it wouldn't matter. The money was already beyond his reach. Next came Robert Sterling, my accountant. Robert had managed my finances through the company's growth stock options and retirement. He greeted the news of Nathan's betrayal with sad resignation. "I wondered about some of those transfers," he admitted. "The frequency, the amounts. But he was your son." "Check everything, Robert. Every transaction, every check I've written to Nathan or Melissa. I need a complete accounting." The numbers, when compiled, staggered even me. Over 3 years between direct gifts, medical bills, home repairs, emergencies, and a dozen other manufactured crises, I'd given Nathan nearly $400,000. That didn't include what they'd stolen through insurance fraud. "There's something else," Robert said, pulling up another screen. "Nathan's been asking questions. He called last month pretending to be you, trying to get information about your portfolios." My assistant caught the deception. His voice was obviously too young. Another piece of evidence. Another betrayal. I wondered if there was any depth Nathan wouldn't sink to. That evening, I had dinner with Nathan and Melissa at their home. My security cameras watched us all, recording evidence I'd review later. I made sure to drink only from sealed bottles. I opened myself, claiming a preference for a particular brand of sparkling water. I've been thinking about the birthday party, I said over Melissa's carefully prepared meal. I want to make it really special. Announce some big changes. Nathan leaned forward. What kind of changes? Well, I'm not getting any younger. Been thinking about my legacy, what I want to leave behind. I paused for effect. I'm considering selling my company stock. All of it. Melissa's fork clattered against her plate. All of it. But that's $8 million, give or take. Markets are high right now. Perfect time to liquidate. I smiled benignly. Of course, I'd need to decide what to do with the proceeds. That's what I want to announce at the party. Nathan recovered first. That's a big decision, Dad. Have you talked to your advisors? Some of them. But honestly, managing money is getting harder. I forget things sometimes. Maybe it's better to simplify everything while I still can. The look that passed between them was pure predator. They smelled blood in the water. An old man admitting weakness, talking about liquidating assets. In their minds, the timeline for their plan had just accelerated. You know we're here to help, Melissa said, reaching across to pat my hand. Family takes care of family. I knew I could count on you both. After dinner, I excused myself to use the bathroom and made a quick detour to their home office. Tom had taught me what to look for. Hidden files, second sets of books, evidence of their schemes. I photographed everything I could find in 2 minutes bank statements, showing deposits matching my gifts receipts for luxury goods, printed emails about Marcus's gym. When I returned, they were whispering intently in the kitchen. They stopped when they saw me, all smiles again. The rest of the evening passed in discussions about the party. Who to invite, what to serve, how to make it memorable. They volunteered to help with planning, eager to be involved in what they saw as their coming windfall. Tom called as I drove back to my hotel. I've got news. Been digging into Administrator 1 from the forum. They made a mistake last week. Posted from an IP address that traced back to Mercy General Hospital. Someone at the hospital is running this? Looks like it. Someone with access to patient records able to identify vulnerable families. I'm narrowing it down, but there are hundreds of employees. Keep digging. And Tom, I moved the money today. Everything's in trusts they can't touch. Smart. How'd the dinner go? I baited the hook. Told them I'm thinking of liquidating everything. You should have seen their faces. Be careful, Cleon. You're backing them into a corner. But I was past careful. The image of them high-fiving over Nathan's broken arm haunted me. The casual cruelty of their deception demanded more than caution. Over the following days, Nathan and Melissa's behavior shifted. They called more frequently, visited daily, insisted on helping with everything. Nathan even suggested I give him power of attorney, just in case something happened. I deflected, claiming I'd handle all that after the party. The most telling change came from Melissa. Her affair with Marcus intensified based on Tom's surveillance. She met him almost daily, often carrying envelopes that likely contained cash. One photographed conversation at a coffee shop showed her gesturing excitedly while he took notes. Planning their escape, no doubt. She's transferring more money, Tom reported. Opened several accounts Nathan doesn't know about. She's stockpiling for her exit. How much? Based on the deposits, we've tracked at least $60,000. All from the money you've given Nathan over the years. It was almost comedic. A con artist being conned by his own partner. Almost. The birthday party planning continued. I insisted on the country club's grand ballroom, a guest list of 150. Nathan suggested a smaller affair, probably worried about witnesses, but I overruled him. It's my 70th birthday, I said. Might be my last big party. I want everyone there. The invitations went out, each one carefully selected. Tom would attend as an old friend. James Peterson and Robert Sterling received invites. Patricia Thompson, the nurse, would come as my special guest. And per Tom's suggestion, Detective Sarah Morgan from Financial Crimes would attend as Robert's +1. But the key invitation went to Dr. Amanda Chen, a geriatric psychiatrist who'd evaluated elderly abuse cases. She'd come as James's guest, ready to observe Nathan and Melissa's behavior and testify if needed. Stack the deck, Tom advised. Make them perform for an audience that's actually paying attention. 2 weeks before the party, Nathan made his move. He arrived at my hotel with a stack of documents, all concern and efficiency. Dad, I've been thinking, with you liquidating assets and making big changes, maybe we should update some paperwork. Just to be safe. The documents included medical power of attorney, financial power of attorney, and a new will, leaving everything to him and Melissa. He'd even pre-filled most sections, leaving only signature lines empty. This seems sudden, I said, pretending to read through them. I'm just worried about you, Dad. You mentioned forgetting things. What if something happens and no one can access your accounts to pay for your care? His manufactured concern might have been touching if I hadn't known about the scopolamine the forum posts, the years of deception. Instead, it took all my self-control not to throw the papers in his face. Let me think about it. Maybe we can sign them at the party, make it official in front of everyone. His eyes lit up. Public signing would make it harder to contest later. That's a great idea, Dad. After he left, I sat in my hotel room staring at the papers he'd brought. In 2 weeks, he planned to take everything. In 2 weeks, I'd give him something else entirely. Justice served cold at a birthday party he'd never forget. The trap was set. Now I just had to survive until it sprang. The country club's grand ballroom transformed under Melissa's surprisingly competent planning. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables dressed in navy linens and gold accents. Floral centerpieces of white orchids and roses perfumed the air. The invitation had promised elegance, and she'd delivered, spending my money with her usual enthusiasm. It's perfect, I told her during the final walkthrough, watching her preen at the praise. Eleanor would have loved this. I wanted it to be special for you, Cleon, she said, squeezing my arm. You deserve the best. Such touching sentiment from someone who'd been poisoning me slowly. I smiled and patted her hand, playing my part, while counting down the days until revelation. Tom's investigation had accelerated in the final 2 weeks. He'd identified Administrator 1 through careful digital forensics and patient cross-referencing. The revelation had shocked even him, Dr. Lawrence Pemberton, Mercy General's chief of geriatric medicine. The very person families trusted with their elderly relatives' care was identifying targets for financial predation. He has access to everything, Tom explained during our final planning meeting. Medical histories, family dynamics, financial information from insurance forms. He knows exactly which patients have money and which adult children might be susceptible to recruitment. How many families has he destroyed? Based on the forum's membership and activity, hundreds. Possibly thousands over the 5 years it's been operating. Tom's expression was grim. Detective Morgan is building a RICO case. This is organized crime hiding behind family dysfunction. The party guest list had grown strategically. Beyond my planned witnesses, we'd added several other parents from the Golden Harvest Forum, victims who didn't yet know they were victims. Tom had contacted them discreetly, suggesting they attend to support a fellow retiree celebrating a milestone. They'd come curious and unsuspecting to witness their own children's exposure. Patricia Thompson visited me 3 days before the party. We met at a quiet restaurant where she could speak freely about her observations. Her dedication to protecting patients had cost her professionally. Nathan and Melissa had filed multiple complaints about her intrusive behavior, nearly getting her suspended. I've been a nurse for 30 years, she said, hands wrapped around a coffee cup. I've seen every kind of family dynamic, but what your son is doing, it's systematic abuse, hiding behind a smile. Tell me about your brother, I said gently. Her face tightened. Robert was always charming. Always had a scheme, a big idea that just needed funding. Our father believed every word, until the day he died, broke and confused, wondering where his retirement went. She met my eyes. I couldn't save my father, but maybe I can help save others. I'd already added her to the trust documents as an overseer. Now I made another decision. Patricia, I want to fund a foundation. Something to help elderly victims of family financial abuse. Would you help run it? Her eyes filled with tears. Mr. Winters. Cleon. I'd be honored. Nathan called daily, as the party approached, his anxiety poorly concealed. He pushed again about the documents, suggesting we meet with his lawyer to review everything. I deflected, maintaining the fiction that we'd handle it all at the party. I've actually prepared a presentation, I told him. Slides and everything. Want to make the announcement properly. Slides. His voice cracked slightly. What kind of announcement needs slides? You'll see. It's going to be memorable. Tom had helped create the presentation, a masterpiece of delayed revelation. It started innocuously with family photos and memories before building to the explosive evidence we'd gathered. Every screenshot, every video, every documented lie would play on the country club's massive screens for all to see. Melissa, meanwhile, was juggling her own deceptions. Tom's surveillance caught her meeting with Marcus the night before the party. They sat in his car for an hour, papers spread between them. She was finalizing her exit strategy, moving the last of her stolen funds into hidden accounts. She's planning to leave the country, Tom reported. Booked a flight to Costa Rica for next week, one way. What about Nathan? No ticket for him. She's going to take the money and run probably right after your party. Wants to be gone before he realizes what hit him. The irony was delicious. Nathan thought he was days away from controlling millions, while his partner prepared to abandon him with nothing but legal troubles. They deserved each other. The morning of my 70th birthday dawned clear and bright. I dressed carefully in my best suit, Eleanor's photo on the hotel dresser, watching me prepare. Almost there, my love, I told her image. Almost time to show them what you always saw. Nathan called at 8, voice tight with barely controlled excitement. Happy birthday, Dad. Can't wait for tonight. It's going to be life-changing. More than you know, son. The day passed in a blur of final preparations. Tom coordinated with Detective Morgan and her team. They'd be present, but discreet, ready to act when the moment came. Dr. Chen reviewed her evaluation notes, prepared to testify about elder abuse patterns. James Peterson had the trust documents ready, proving the money was already beyond reach. I arrived at the country club early, watching the staff complete their setup. Nathan and Melissa appeared at 6 dressed beautifully and radiating false warmth. Nathan carried a leather folder, the documents he expected me to sign. You look wonderful, Dad, he said, embracing me. I wondered if he could feel my heart racing, if he sensed the trap closing around him. It's a big day, I replied. Everything changes after tonight. Guests began arriving at 6:30. Tom blended into the crowd, keeping watch. Patricia Thompson looked elegant in a dark blue dress, her presence a comfort. The other parents from the forum arrived in small groups, chatting normally, unaware their children were part of the same predatory network. I made rounds playing host while noting who attended. Several of Nathan's colleagues had come along with neighbors and old business associates. But sprinkled throughout were our plants, the detective, the psychiatrist, the lawyer, the accountant, all waiting for the signal. At 7:30, Nathan approached with the leather folder. Dad, before dinner, maybe we should handle those documents, get business out of the way. After the presentation, I said, I want everyone to understand my decision first. His smile flickered but held. Of course. Whatever you prefer. Dinner service began at 8. Prime rib and salmon, Eleanor's favorite combination. I sat at the head table with Nathan and Melissa, watching them bask in premature victory. They whispered between courses, pointing at various guests, probably calculating their impending wealth. Finally, as dessert was served, I stood and tapped my glass. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. My moment had arrived. Thank you all for coming. I began, voice steady, despite my racing pulse. 70 years is a significant milestone, and I'm grateful to share it with people who've made my journey meaningful. Applause rippled through the room. Nathan and Melissa beamed, playing the devoted family. I've been blessed with success in business, a loving marriage to my late wife Eleanor, and a son I've tried to give everything. I paused, meeting Nathan's eyes. Tonight, I want to share some important announcements about my future and the legacy I'll leave behind. But first, I continued, I'd like to share a presentation about family trust and the true meaning of inheritance. Nathan, Melissa, this is especially for you. The lights dimmed as the first slide appeared a photo of Nathan as a baby in Eleanor's arms. Perfect misdirection. The audience smiled at the sentimental beginning, settling in for what they expected to be a touching family tribute. They had no idea what was coming. Neither did Nathan and Melissa, still smiling in the darkness, hands clasped in anticipated triumph. The trap was set, the players in position. Time for the reveal they'd never forget. The presentation began with warmth and nostalgia. Photos of Nathan's childhood filled the screen. First steps, little league games, high school graduation. I narrated each memory with genuine emotion, because despite everything, those moments had been real. Eleanor and I built our lives around our son, I said, clicking to a photo of the three of us at Nathan's college graduation. Every success in business meant nothing compared to his happiness. When she died, I promised to continue that devotion. Nathan shifted in his seat, perhaps sensing the shift in tone. Melissa maintained her smile, but her fingers drummed against the table. After Eleanor's passing, Nathan needed help. Medical school debt, a new house, career challenges. What father wouldn't provide support? The next slide showed a simple chart. Over 3 years, I've given Nathan and Melissa approximately $400,000. Murmurs rippled through the audience. The number was substantial, even for this affluent crowd. But recently, I discovered something troubling. I clicked to the next slide, a still from the garage security camera. This is from Nathan's home security system. The same system he asked me to disconnect because it made Melissa uncomfortable. The timestamp showed clearly 7:05 p.m., the night of Nathan's latest injury. The image was damning. Nathan with his arm positioned on the workbench, Melissa holding the hammer. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Nathan shot to his feet. "Dad, what is this?" "Sit down, son. We're just getting started." The next slide played the video. The entire room watched in stunned silence as Melissa brought the hammer down on Nathan's arm. The high five afterward drew audible shock from the crowd. Several people covered their mouths in horror. This wasn't the first time. I continued, my voice steady, despite the pain of public revelation. 8 hospital visits in 3 years each during my quarterly visits, each resulting in significant financial support. The slides continued relentlessly. Medical records, insurance claims, bank deposits matching my gifts. The evidence built into an undeniable pattern of fraud and abuse. But breaking bones for money wasn't enough. The next slides showed screenshots from the Golden Harvest Forum. Nathan and Melissa are active members of an online community that teaches adult children how to extract money from elderly parents through manufactured crises. I read Nathan's posts aloud, each word a dagger. 5th successful operation complete. The old man thinks he's helping his poor accident-prone son. The emoji at the end drew particular disgust from the audience. Detective Morgan had moved closer to our table, her badge now visible. 2 uniformed officers flanked the exits. Nathan's face had gone from red to ashen white. The scheme goes deeper, I said, clicking to the next slide. Hair analysis shows I've been systematically poisoned with scopolamine during each visit. Small doses designed to mimic dementia symptoms. The goal: have me declared incompetent and gain control of my entire estate. Dr. Chen stood up from her table. I've reviewed the toxicology reports. This is attempted murder through slow poisoning, a federal crime. Melissa tried to stand, but Tom's hand on her shoulder kept her seated. She looked around wildly, perhaps searching for Marcus, but he was nowhere to be seen. Her escape plan had evaporated. There's more, I continued. The person organizing this network of elder abuse is here tonight. Dr. Lawrence Pemberton, chief of geriatric medicine at Mercy General. All eyes turned to Pemberton's table. He sat frozen, face pale as Detective Morgan approached with another officer. Dr. Pemberton used his position to identify wealthy, elderly patients with vulnerable family dynamics. He recruited their children into his scheme, teaching them to prey on the people who loved them most. The presentation showed evidence Tom had gathered forum posts, traced to Pemberton's IP address bank records, showing payments from grateful students, testimonies from families destroyed by his network. But justice has a way of finding daylight. I said, voice growing stronger. Every person involved in this network will face charges. RICO violations, elder abuse, fraud, attempted murder in some cases. The FBI is coordinating with local law enforcement for simultaneous arrests. Around the room, several younger guests were quietly surrounded by officers. The other parents from the forum watched in dawning horror as their own children were detained. The scope of the network's infiltration into our community was staggering. As for my announcement, I said, turning back to Nathan and Melissa, I have indeed made changes to my estate. 2 weeks ago, I placed all assets into irrevocable trusts. $8 million goes to the Eleanor Winters Foundation for Cancer Research. The remaining $4 million funds my care, and a new foundation Patricia Thompson will direct to help victims of elder financial abuse. Nathan's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The fortune he'd schemed for had vanished like smoke. There's one more revelation, I added, unable to resist. Melissa, your partner Marcus Wade was arrested this afternoon. It seems you weren't the only one he was romancing. 3 other women from this network thought they were funding their gym. He's been playing you all. Melissa's composure finally shattered. You bastard. You can't prove anything. Nathan made me do it. Actually, Tom said, producing a tablet. We have your text messages with Marcus, planning to abandon Nathan after securing the inheritance. You're both equally guilty. Detective Morgan stepped forward. Nathan Winters. Melissa Winters. You're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, attempted poisoning, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. As they were handcuffed, Nathan looked at me with something like genuine emotion for the first time in years. Dad, please. I'm your son. My son died the day he decided breaking his own bones for money was acceptable, I replied. You're just a stranger who looks like him. The arrests continued throughout the ballroom. Pemberton tried to run, but was tackled by security. Other children from the network were led away as their parents wept or sat in stunned silence. The birthday party had become a mass arrest, years of abuse finally meeting consequences. Patricia Thompson appeared at my elbow as the chaos swirled. Are you all right? Better than I've been in years, I said truthfully. The truth is painful, but lies are cancer. Eleanor knew that. As the police cleared the room, several of the victimized parents approached me. Harold Martinez, whose daughter had been drugging him, shook my hand with tears in his eyes. Grace Chen, whose son had stolen her retirement savings, hugged me wordlessly. We were a brotherhood of the betrayed, but tonight we'd found justice. Tom coordinated with law enforcement, ensuring all evidence was properly transferred. The case would make headlines, the largest elder abuse network ever prosecuted. Nathan and Melissa faced decades in prison. Pemberton would likely die behind bars. The country club manager approached nervously. Mr. Winters, I'm so sorry about all this. Don't apologize, I told him. You've hosted the most important party of my life, though perhaps we should skip the cake cutting. Later in the quiet aftermath, I stood on the club's terrace, overlooking the golf course. The stars were bright, the air clean. I felt Eleanor's presence, her approval of the hard choice made. Patricia joined me, along with Tom James Peterson and several others who'd helped bring justice. We raised glasses of champagne in a toast. To Eleanor, I said, who told me love means seeing clearly, not just providing blindly. To justice, Patricia added. To survival, Tom concluded. We drank, and I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The son I'd loved was gone, had been gone for years. But in exposing his crimes, I'd saved dozens of other families from similar betrayal. The foundations would help hundreds more. Eleanor's legacy would be one of healing, not enabling. 6 months later, I write this from my new home on the coast. Smaller than before, but filled with peace. The trials have begun with Nathan and Melissa, both pleading guilty to avoid maximum sentences. They'll serve 20 years minimum. Pemberton got life without parole. The foundations thrive. Patricia runs the Elder Abuse Prevention Program with passionate efficiency. The Cancer Research Fund has already contributed to promising trials. I volunteer at the local senior center, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs. Last week, I received a letter from Nathan in prison. He claims to have found religion to be sorry to want forgiveness. Maybe it's genuine. Maybe it's another manipulation. Either way, I didn't respond. That relationship ended the night he picked up a hammer. I think of Eleanor often, especially during seaside sunsets. She'd be proud, I think, that I finally learned to see clearly. Love doesn't mean enabling destruction. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to be a victim. To those watching who recognize their own stories in mine, you're not alone. Trust your instincts. Protect yourself. And remember that family isn't defined by blood, but by those who truly care for your well-being. My name is Cleon Winters. I'm 70 years old. My son tried to destroy me, but I survived. And if you're facing similar betrayal, you can survive too. The first step is seeing clearly. The second is choosing justice over false harmony. Thank you for listening to my story. If you found value in it, please share it with others who might need to hear it. Comment with your own experiences. Together, we're stronger than those who would prey on us. Like and subscribe if you want to hear more stories of survival and justice. And remember, you deserve love that builds up, not tears down. Accept nothing less. May you find the peace that comes with truth and the strength that comes with surviving betrayal. The camera never lies, and neither should the people who claim to love us.